Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first go at something that we don't know what it is. I'm Luca. I've been a coffee tragic for years and years. I competed in some coffee competitions. I judged in some. I got to kind of travel to visit a couple of different origins and stuff like that. And I'm now no longer working in coffee. But I love going and trying all of the stuff that all of my friends who work in coffee are producing. I love seeing how the industry has evolved and how quality keeps on improving. And given that I'm not going to be out and about on the weekend cupping stuff with friends and going and visiting, my friends in the industry and buying their stuff, I'm still going to keep on having fun and enjoying stuff. And so I've got a conference call that I've got convened today that we're recording. And I'm just going to cup some coffees at some different grind levels. Who's joined in so far?
I'm here, Shavik.
Hi, Shavik.
I'm a bit of a noob to all of this stuff, but luckily I've been around Luca for a while, so I've gotten to learn a lot from him. I think Luca also forgot to mention that he's, along with competing in a few competitions, he's also won a few, so that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, well, that was a little while back, but yeah, very, very generous of you. Yes.
Sam, you want to hop in?
Sorry?
Sam, you there?
I think Sam's on mute.
Oh, is he?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was roasting in the background, that's why.
Roasting in the background.
Multitasking, yeah.
Are you using the Quest, Sam?
Yeah, I'm roasting using a Quest M3, which was modified with a TC4 Arduino.
Oh, okay. And are you manually controlling it, or are you automatically roasting?
So I just set up the power setting in the Artisan software and just let it does its thing. So, but at the moment I'm just cooling down the beans. So I still have to manually drop when it's done, I have to drop it. So yeah, that was what I was doing earlier.
Stop talking to us, Sam. You'll screw it up. Shut up. Okay, all right. We'll release Sam. We'll be nice to him. Alrighty. So, Shavik, are you drinking the coffees that I'm just preparing this cupping on now?
Yeah, I've got the Gichugu.
Yeah, which
and,
one have you got?
I've got the Gichugu in front of me. I also tried doing an espresso shot of it this morning. So that didn't go so great. So I'll need to probably have another crack at it, but that's espresso for you.
Yeah. What was wrong with it? Too fast, too slow?
Too fast. I had it pre-infused for a bit and then it just gushed through. Yeah. Anyway, have another crack at it. That's just espresso. It's all good.
Fair enough.
There's always tomorrow.
Yeah. Whilst I was preparing this, I carefully weighed out some beans and then promptly forgot which of the two that we're tasting it was. So I took the mystery beans and I used them to make this Americano. And so one of my tasks is to cut through all of these and then see if I can work out what the hell this was. Yeah, that's cool. So we're coming up on 9 minutes. So I've set up a cupping here. Lots of people have cupped before. If you haven't, it's just ground coffee, goes in the bottom of a cup. You top it up with hot water, and then you wait at least 12 minutes before you taste it. You would have seen before that I skimmed all of the stuff that came up on the top. And basically this will sit here and will continue to extract. Now, one of the things that we're doing here is I've got this grinder over here and I've just popped new burrs into it. So I have the same problem that everyone has when they have new equipment. I have no idea what the right grind setting is. So what we're doing here is we're trying 3 different grind settings on the first coffee, 3 different grind settings on the second coffee. Then we've got the first coffee on the same grind setting in each 3 of these cups. And it's a 50-50 blend of the first coffee and the second coffee. And the second coffee is at the 3 different grind settings that are here. So what we're going to find out is two things. We're going to find out, number one, if you buy these coffees, what sort of grind settings would be good to try? And number two, when you blend coffees, what happens? Do you need to make sure that they both work on the same grind setting? Is it a disaster if they need to be at different grind settings? And how badly can one grind setting of half of the coffee being off destroy the whole experience? So it's not really an especially elaborately well-constructed experiment, but I thought it might be a little bit of fun. Coolio. And so I think we've got a couple of other people joining and listening in the chat, which is kind of cool. You guys are on mute, so if you want to say something, come off mute and say something. If not, you can type questions or whatever in the chat. So we're now coming up on about 12 minutes. So I probably need a few minutes before I start tasting these because these will be a little bit hot. So let's go into the coffees that we've got. So there are lots and lots of coffee roasters around Australia, tons. And it's very difficult to work out what their styles are like, you know, what sorts of coffee they're buying and what aims they're trying to achieve. So I'm interested in light roasted coffees that have lots and lots of like fruit and floral type flavors. The flavors that are sort of the things that are the most distinctive about those coffees. So I tend to go for that rather than things that have more developed roasts that have higher body and lower acidity, but which result in the coffee losing those distinctive flavors that the farmer has put a lot of work to put into there. So,
and Luca, do you find like your tastes have evolved with time? Because that's something I've heard other people like Tim Wendelbo say as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I think that when people start off drinking coffee, people generally really hate acidity, and B, the people come to it with an experience of coffee that has lots and lots of body to it. And so that's usually the gold standard for most people, the North Star and the barometer that they shoot for. But I think that the more and more time you spend in coffee, the more those coffees tend to taste quite the same. And as a coffee professional, you'll do a lot of stuff like this. You'll try lots and lots of different cups. And on a table like this, something like a darker roasted Brazilian coffee that has low acidity, it might have higher bitterness from the roast, they start to all taste quite the same after a while. So yeah, over time, those acidic cups kind of stand out more and you just get used to the acidity. And it bothers you less and you start to appreciate the sort of fruit flavors and things like that more. Mm-hmm. What also goes hand in hand with that is that the roast style is a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario, because most things that are on the market are darker roasted and more developed and lower in acidity, and they've kind of roasted out a lot of those more distinctive flavors. And because that is what's on the market, I think there's a tremendous pressure on coffee roasters not to alienate their audience.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, it's a risk to go and create coffees that are really acidic and that are not huge in body. And so it's just hard to get exposure to it. So it's sort of invariably stacked against this style of coffee. And there are lots of people that don't like this, and that's totally fine. But I think...
I think I've chatted with a couple of coffee shop owners, and they've said the same exact thing. That like they're very apprehensive about changing roasters because of, like you say, alienating their existing customer base. It's a bit of a risk, isn't it? I think. Do you think the other thing is also that a lot of the market is based on milk-based drinks?
Yeah, totally. I mean, when people talk about coffee in Australia, they mean a milk-based coffee.
Mm.
So, you know, it can be a pretty tough one for people who want to roast coffee like this, which is where it's probably worth segueing into. This is a filter roast. These are both filter roast coffees. They're from Sample, which is in Surrey Hills in Sydney. And they are both Kenyan coffees. So we've had pretty great success with Kenyan coffees over the last year or so. Kenyan coffees are sort of famously, the varieties tend to be SL28 and SL34, developed by Scott Labs. And they tend to have a great sort of intensity of like berry type flavors. They might have black currant. They often have a bit of citrus to them. They might have some tomato to them. They might have a bit more plum and stuff like that. But we've also tasted SL28 and SL34 that have been grown in Central America. And what's been very interesting about those is that they don't tend to taste like Kenyans. They tend to taste more like Centrals. So they've tended to taste, of the ones that we've tasted, they've been more sort of stone fruit nectarine, less black currant, less sort of plum, that kind of thing. So they've really tasted a lot more of their origin than of their variety. So when we come to these, the descriptions on these coffees were very interesting. So there's this one here that's Gichugu, and you know, Sample's written lime, grapefruit, black currant. So this is classic Kenya, Nyeri area type flavour. That's absolutely sort of what you'd expect. Maybe grapefruit instead of lime. Now this one, Rinjagi, they've written cranberry stewed peach and sherbet. So to my mind, the question here is this something that tastes more like what you get when you grow SL28 in Central America? And that's what we're finding out. So we're coming up at 18 minutes, which is prime cupping time. So I'm going to keep on slurping through. Shavik, what are you actually drinking at the moment? Are you drinking that terrible espresso you made, or?
No, I'm past that. I'm on to Gichugu now.
All right, cool. And how did you brew it?
I'm actually just doing a cupping thing with it, just to kind of go through the same thing you're going through, possible. Different grind setting, probably. But yeah. Just thought I'd brew it this way, which I found to be pretty good in terms of getting a lot of the flavor out of the coffee.
Cool.
Mm.
Alrighty, so I'm just getting through these.
Yeah.
So the first one on the left is the Gichugu.
Mm-hmm.
Then here I'm on the Rinjagi. And here's the blends. So straight away, the thing that really stands out is that the one where I went super fine tastes like it's super fine. It's quite bitter. So that's this one on the Rinjagi. I'm just taking out a sample so that we can run a refractometer reading of it. So then over here on the Gichugu, here's our coarsest one. So I'll take this one off. Now these refractometer readings are probably going to be pretty bad because you get a lot of scum that floats up on the top and that interferes with the light refraction. And then we might go for the finer of the two that are sort of in the zone. So, how do they taste? So yeah, the descriptors on the bag are pretty accurate. The Gichugu, yeah, it is actually quite like a little limey. And the Gichugu is the sort of the bigger and the bolder of the two. It's got quite a long aftertaste. It's got a little bit of like plum, but sort of like fresh plum. It's not like a mega heavy stewed type plum flavor. It's not hugely jammy. And yeah, you know, it's got blackcurrant in it, classic, totally classic flavor. Alrighty, so let's go to the Rinjagi. So this one over here is the finest grind setting, and it's awful. It's both bitter and it's really, really lemony. So this is the finer grind setting that's okay. It's still quite lemony. This one's sort of lower in body. It's quite citric. It's I mean, in that sense, it's almost more like towards like a Colombian type coffee than a Kenyan. And then so the coarsest grind setting here seems to be the one that's doing this coffee the best flavor, the best flavors. It's sort of developed more almost like a creamy type quality. It's a little sort of stone fruity. It's lower in body. It actually has quite a nice long aftertaste that's sort of a little stone fruity, but this one's definitely sort of, you know, just more intensity and more classic, I think. Both good coffees. All right, so now onto the blend. So this one is the blend of the finer but okay grind settings. Yeah, it tastes, you know, exactly as you would expect it. It's sort of, just, you know, nicely rounded. Like, I mean, that's a great cup of coffee. It's super juicy. Nothing's over or under extracted. And it's got, it's got quite a long aftertaste. So that's good. So this one is the finer Gichugu and the coarser Rinjagi. And it's actually a little bizarre. It tastes sort of a bit like a straw, which I'm not really getting out of these cups here. But it is very bizarre that it doesn't actually taste like a blend of the two grind settings. And then this one should be pretty clear because this is the finer grind setting, which was pretty good on the Gichugu, with the the much finer grind setting on the Rinjagi. And yeah, even at 50%, the Rinjagi is just like totally ashy. It's like really obliterated that, and it's quite offensive to kind of drink that one.
Yeah, I think the amount of impact grind setting has on flavor has been pretty amazing, as we've seen over the past year, for myself at least. It's been pretty eye-opening in terms of the impact a grinder has on your brewing setup and your brewing ability. Do you think you could maybe walk us through what the mechanisms might be behind like that kind of thing, or is that just like too? Is it like something hard for people to actually, have any consensus on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of theory about it, and people talk about how the grind particles fracture and what impact fine particles have compared with everything else. But then you look a little deeper into it, and then it turns out that a lot of those particle distribution graphs are all based on weight. Like they separate out the different fractions by weight. Using sieves, and then they weigh them. But it doesn't extract by weight, it extracts by individual particle. So particle count, you would think, would be more important. And then when you redo the graphs by particle count, then they look sort of totally different. So it's pretty hard to kind of, I sort of think that there's enough noise in the, like the
Mechanisms.
physical data, yeah, and the mechanisms that we're getting, that I think that we should just look at just what actually tastes good and how does it taste. So I'm just going to take some quick TDS readings, which might be, you know, a bit over the top if you're kind of just tuning in.
Getting into it. Yeah.
This one, yeah, is a casual type thing. But let's just give it a shot. Now, one of the things that this will show, or that this will probably show, is that because of this brewing method, it's very gentle. We don't have much agitation. So what tends to happen is that you tend to get TDS readings that are very similar. So TDS being total dissolved solids, like the amount of ground coffee that's dissolved into the water. And yet the taste ends up being quite different, most notably with the super fine grind on here. So what we've got here is the readings that I've gotten, and yeah, they're not filtered and everything, so that there might be a little bit of a margin of error in them, but they range from 1.07 to 1.12. So these are fairly weak cups that probably have a relatively high level of extraction. And at this extraction level, the dissolved solids difference between them isn't much, but yet the bitterness of the fine ground cup is much, much, much higher. So it feels like maybe we're losing out on extracting some of those solids that would otherwise have good flavour, and that's been substituted for extracting for the bitterness, as opposed to having something that's a higher TDS, a higher extraction level, that has both the original flavour that we liked, as well as a lot more bitterness. But what we can take away from this, I think, is that that if you're using an immersion method, you've probably got a pretty large margin of error, because both of the cups that that I had that were sort of in the zone all turned out to be, you know, perfectly drinkable on both of these. The most undrinkable was something that was too fine. The one that was too coarse is quite an interesting one over here. So that's this one. I only did a super coarse one on the Gichugu. And it's not bad. It's a little dilute. Or it's lacking in a little bit of character. But it's not bad. It's still pretty drinkable, and I think that part of that might be because of the very long steep time that we've had here. So, you know, if you want to make a cup of coffee that's drinkable, you're not 100% sure what the grind setting is. You know, grab your French press, chuck some water in there, let it steep for a long time, agitate it minimally, and then just sort of, you know, filter it off. Probably pretty likely to work. So I think that brings us to the end of this experiment. I don't know that we really, you know, changed the world or anything like that, but we had some great coffee. I think Sample did a great job with this, and of the two, I preferred the Gichugu, but that's sort of Kenyans, you know, the ones with the biggest personality that kind of stand up and kind of scream at you tend to be the ones that kind of everybody likes and that win the day. So that's that. Cool. So that wraps up whatever this show, video, ramble is. We'll convene again next week. By that time, maybe we'll have something of an idea of what we're doing. But that's sort of not the point. The point at the moment is we're all going to be drinking a lot of coffee at home. Let's enjoy it. And let's support people who are doing a great job and who are putting a lot of effort into quality and who are producing the kind of coffee that, you know, we want to drink. Maybe that's not maybe what I'm talking about isn't what you guys want. That's fine. But if this is what interests you, then you've got some information about it. What we'll try and do, I think, next week is we'll try and do a brewing method of some sort, and then we'll go through another coffee that I'll pick and spotlight. I have paid my own Australian dollars for this coffee. It is not sponsored. That's probably all there is to say. Catch you guys next week.